Welcome to the Roberts Law Office Injury Podcast. Kentucky attorney Jeff Roberts has over 25 years of experience. He'll provide answers to your questions related to personal injury and automobile accidents, workers' compensation claims, and Social Security disability benefits. Let's join Jeff for this episode. Hey friends, welcome back. We are in Callaway County, but today we are going to be talking about Hopkinsville. We're going to be talking about Christian County with attorney Jeff Roberts. Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing good, Jim. How are you?
Buddy, I'm doing fine. You know, you've got that second office up in Hopkinsville, so I thought today we'd spend a little bit of time talking about the environment there. There's surprisingly, for me, there's surprisingly a lot of manufacturing that's going on in Christian County.
There is. Christian County has a lot of manufacturing facilities. In fact, they very well may have more than Murray has and Callaway County has from that standpoint, which is one of the reasons why I opened the office up in Hopkinsville. There's not a lot of attorneys who handle workers' compensation claims up in that area, so I wanted to, and I always had a lot of clients come from the Christian County, Trigg County area down to Murray and hire me for their claims. And to make it a little bit easier on them, I opened up that office up in Christian County a couple of years ago now that it's been opened up there in Hopkinsville, and it's worked out well.
Well, and I like how you say that because really with your workers' comp practice, it's a statewide practice. I mean, you're traveling quite a bit. You've got clients up in Bowling Green, up in Warren County. You've got up in Jefferson County, Northern Kentucky, Fayette. Correct. I mean, really all over. I think we sometimes say Paducah to Pikeville, right?
Paducah to Pikeville. I've had clients all over the state from that standpoint, and do currently have clients in a variety of different places. And, you know, it's a lot of the clients that I have, especially those from outside of Western Kentucky, are referrals from other attorneys. And you know, there's a saying that I've heard, and I agree with it, that one of the biggest compliments someone can give to me is to refer a friend or a client to me. From that standpoint, and the fact that I've had attorneys all over the state refer their friends, their family members, and clients to me to handle their workers' comp or other personal injury claim is one of the biggest compliments I can get.
Well, and I think one of the things for Hopkinsville to think about is that not only do you handle the workers' compensation claim, but you can also handle a personal injury claim, which could be a truck wreck, a motorcycle accident. You've actually ridden motorcycles for years. Yes. Got a good background on that personally, which kind of probably gives you a different kind of perspective than somebody who's just operating from, well, here's what the paperwork says. I mean, you've actually ridden them. Car wrecks, obviously, but you also do Social Security disability claims.
Yes, I handle all three of those. I do workers' compensation and car wrecks or automobile accident cases. I do quite a bit of that. General personal injury. I mean, I do other personal injury claims as well, premises liability, slip and fall, those type of cases as well, plus Social Security disability. I've done that. In my practice, when I first started practicing, the attorney I started practicing with did workers' compensation cases, and he did the general personal injury, did not do any of the Social Security. But unfortunately, frequently with the injuries that we saw from motor vehicle accidents or from work injuries, the person was totally disabled and had a Social Security disability claim, and that he used to refer people out to on those, and I decided early on that I wanted to be able to help my clients who needed help in that area as well. I think it's, from my perspective, I believe if you can have one attorney handling the different claims for you, it's easier to coordinate, it's less expensive, the client has just one person to talk to and things of that nature. So I think it's just better to do that. So I learned the Social Security process and started handling those claims as a fairly young attorney. Been doing all of it now for over 30 years. So.
Yeah, wow. I mean, a lot on your plate. But as we look at Christian County, you know, this isn't all encompassing. But I mean, there are different industry sectors that we see there. I mean, there's a lot of manufacturing that goes around tubing. So you see metal tubing and that kind of stuff. But you also see some chemical plants. I mean, we talked a little bit about Amfine and Sun Chemical out there. Who have a presence there in Hopkinsville. And then you get into a lot of, you know, just regular manufacturing facilities, right? J-Tech and Comfry and Martin Rea,
Yeah.
T-Gas, all these different types of manufacturers.
Yeah, you've got a lot of manufacturers up in that area that do different things. It kind of feed in together to some extent. There is a lot of automotive component parts being manufactured up in that area, and I think that's growing more just in western Kentucky, because there's some here in Callaway as well. But up there, yeah, you've got a lot of companies that are doing the component parts aspect of it, and I know T-Rad makes the heat exchangers, radiator type things for vehicles there. And you mentioned the metal tubing, and of course, obviously that goes into that. I know there's, I think Plymouth, if I'm not mistaken, does some tubing. I don't know if they feeds into the other.
Right.
Provides parts to that.
Yeah, Breezeway up there as well. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So you've got those, and I think I hope they do kind of work together in that regard, because I think that's really good for a community to have companies that, one's doing one part that another company in that same community is using to make additional parts, and then to the ultimate seller or the ultimate buyer of it or user of the products from that standpoint. But if you have that all in-house, so to speak, in the local community, I think that helps the entire community out.
Yeah. So, well, and while it's all varied, in terms of the types of products and manufacturing processes that are going on there, like a lot of the workers' comp episodes that we've put together, there are some commonalities in there. I mean, and one of them that you always make a point of talking about is if you've been injured in the workplace, if you've been hurt on the job, you got to notify your employer, right? A lot of people probably don't know if they really want to do that. They might have some concerns about it, but really by law, you're required to.
Yes, you're supposed to provide notice to the employer as soon as practical after the work-related injury. Now, there can be some reasons for a delay in notifying the employer, but it's always best to notify the employer as soon as practical. And that doesn't mean you have to go traipse up to HR and talk to somebody in HR to report it. Your job is to report it to one of your superiors from that standpoint. So if you report it to your foreman, and it's their job to report it on up the line from that standpoint. Now, some employers do have internally that if you have a work injury, this is the person, it may be safety person or something like that, that you're supposed to do so. And if your company has that internal policy on who's supposed to be reported to, then that's who you ought to report it to. The reason for that is, if that's the person who gets the reports of the work injuries, then they know what to do as far as getting it to the workers' comp carrier or getting you to seek medical treatment if you need medical treatment immediately. It knows how to process it, where the foreman over you may not. A lot of plants are, you report it to your immediate, and they keep going up the line from that standpoint. But if your company doesn't do that, then make sure you go to the right person, because if you tell your supervisor, you probably have complied with what's required under Kentucky law, but it can be a delay because if that supervisor doesn't know what to do about that. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and so when you get into that, you're depending on the size of your facility, you may also have sort of an in-house or a plant medical facility there, and sometimes that satisfies it when you report to the nurse's aid station or something like that. Right?
Most of the time, if they have an in-house nurse's station, plant medical, that is the one they want you to report it to in that regard. So yes, I know several places that have in-house medical, and that's who they want you to go to with. And frankly, if you tell your supervisor or a foreman, they normally will say, go see plant medical from that standpoint. So that can be helpful from that perspective, but you need to be clear also about what happened and why you're hurting in that regard. Because some of these plant medical have, they will treat people even for things that aren't work-related, that didn't occur in the facility. And so you need to make sure you're going in there and say, well, when I did this job, this happened type thing.
I was on the line and this occurred.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't just go in there and say, I got a sore shoulder. My shoulder's hurting because I'm working above my head all day long and my shoulder started hurting on me, type thing. You gotta be specific about what caused it so they know that it is work related.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, I know in a previous episode 121, we did a really good breakdown. I should say you did a really good breakdown of the various types of benefits that are available under workers' comp. So
Correct.
again, I'll put a link to that in the show notes. So if you're listening to this and you're trying to figure out, well, okay, what does it cover? That's a really good reference episode. I like that a lot. So we talked about the duty to notify. One of the other issues to think about is if you're going to seek medical treatment, maybe going to your family physician first, and there may be a reason for that, right?
Yes. That's usually my recommendation is that you go to your own personal family doctor first for medical treatment. A couple of reasons for that. First, that person already knows your history, knows your medical background, and there may be certain medications because of an issue, a health issue you have that you don't need to be taking. They already know that, so they know to stay away. If you have if you're allergic to penicillin, then they know not to prescribe you penicillin going in. And if you go to some urgent care facilities and all of that, they're going to ask you as a general rule, are you allergic to anything? But if you're in a lot of pain, you know, sometimes you may forget that. The doctors already know this from that standpoint. And normally the family doctor also is going to have more of an allegiance to you than they are to the company, whereas a company doctor has more allegiance to the company than they do to you. In Kentucky does provide for provider choice for medical treatment, so you get to pick your doctor, who you go to physical therapy, diagnostic testing, pharmacy, all of those you get to decide on in Kentucky. You decide that, not the insurance company or the employer cannot tell you, you've got to go to our doctor. Some still do that, even though the law is very clear they don't get to do that. Some will still tell their employers or employees, excuse me, that if you don't go to our company doctor, we're not going to pay the bill. That's not the law in Kentucky. They will still be responsible for that bill. Now, there is one quirk to that in Kentucky. Kentucky, the workers' comp carrier can have a managed care network. And if they have a managed care network, first off, they got to notify you that they have a managed care network. They have to provide you a list of the providers within that managed care network. Normally, that's just providing you a website that you can go to find those. They don't have to print it out for you. But you get to pick within that managed care network, and they have to have doctors, a selection of doctors in there, so they can't have just one family doctor in that managed care network and funnel everybody to that. They have to have a selection of doctors within that for the family doctor or general practitioners, orthopedic specialists, neurosurgeons, et cetera, whatever you may need. There's got to be a selection, and if there's not a selection, then you're going to ultimately be allowed to go outside of that network to find someone else if you wish to do that.
Companies that might have a managed care network, are those generally larger companies? I mean, I don't know that I've ever really bumped into one of those.
There's not a lot in Kentucky that do
Okay.
have a managed care network. There's one carrier who developed a managed care network years ago, and they kind of went away from it. There's one I think that still does, but it's rare that I actually see, at least in Western Kentucky,
Right.
that I actually see a managed care network. But a lot of your larger companies are self-insured for workers' comp purposes, and most self-insureds do not have a managed care network.
Oh, really?
No, they do not have a managed care network. Thinking of some that come to mind, General Motors is self-insured. The Kroger companies, all of their things, they're self-insured. And so they don't. I don't know that I've ever seen a self-insured that's actually had a managed care network.
Okay. Okay. So as we come back to Hopkinsville, as a Christian county, we're talking about some decent sized companies, but they're not large, all the time. I mean, we do have some big players, obviously,
Yes.
in that environment, but realistically, you're gonna come into a number of different types of injuries. Sorry, that we've talked about cumulative trauma. You mentioned a shoulder injury when we were
Yeah.
talking about the nurses station, and so there are various types of cumulative trauma that maybe people aren't thinking about because they're told, well, it's arthritis or it's part of getting older. But let's talk a little bit about cumulative trauma because a lot of these types of jobs have repetitive motion, and that's really what's causing it. So, but I'll let you talk about it more than me.
Yeah, when you do jobs where you're doing the same activity repetitively, then it can result in what's referred to frequently as cumulative trauma injury or a wear and tear injury is another term that is used for that. And essentially, it just means you're doing you're doing the same activity over and over, and you wear a certain part of your body out. Like if you're lifting and going overhead with product all the time, you're doing that several hundred times a day, you're going to wear your shoulders out quicker than someone who doesn't have to do that. The same with someone who has to lift heavy weights and pack heavy weights. They're going to wear their lower back out quicker than someone who doesn't have to do that. And a lot of times when you go to doctors, they'll look at it and say, well, you've got arthritis, as you mentioned, from there, or they'll say you've got a degenerative condition going on in your shoulder. It's wearing down. And that's going to happen over time for two people, even without a triggering event. But frequently, if you go to the doctor and talk with them and say, my job requires me to do this, did this play a role in it? And a lot of times it has played a role in it from that standpoint. Now, a lot of these develop though because you do it over and over and over, and you wear it out, and then you do it that one time, the straw that broke the camel's back instance, where you lift that box up over and put it on a high shelf over your head, and then have a sudden sharp pain in the right or left shoulder, and then you go to the doctor and they say, yeah, you get a tear. And the same with lifting. You lift a heavy box and go to put it somewhere, and then have a sudden onset of back pain. So a lot of times there is a final triggering event that causes it that you know about, and the doctors know that. But then you have the insurance company look at it, and they'll the doctor said, we've got degenerative disc disease, and they said, well, that pre-existed this lifting incident that you had at work. This developed over years and years, not just from this one incident, and they tried to deny the claim. And in Kentucky, at least, the law is clear that even if you have a degenerative condition that's not work-related, a lot of times the degenerative condition is work-related, but even if it's not work-related, if a work event triggers it and causes it to be painful and causes you to have to seek medical treatment for it, then it's still a compensable work injury in Kentucky.
Yeah, and that's what's funny is well, it's actually much more unfortunate rather than funny. But the games that tend to get played in this whole workers compensation scenario. I mean, a lot of the employers, I mean, yeah, they like having the fact that you're showing up and you're working hard. But once you get injured in the workplace, you're a little bit of a liability at that point. So now it's let's try to get you to the company doctor, as we talked about earlier, or let's see if we can delay maybe some testing or maybe try some other things. And they're not always focused on you. And again, I think that's a really good reason to come back to the family physician.
Well, to come back to the family physician, exactly. The family doctor is going to be more focused on you, going to know and they're going to send you, if you need to see a specialist, they're going to send you to a specialist that they know is good. And instead of sending you to a specialist that is more company oriented or will accept a reduced rate from the insurance company in that regard. And so that's always another reason why you should go to the family doctor. And a third reason to do that is you don't get in Kentucky, you do have to designate a what is commonly referred to as a gatekeeper physician, or a Form 113 physician, and that is a doctor who is essentially your doctor, and you can change that doctor one time without the insurance company's approval, but after you've made that change, then one time the insurance company can nix another change in that. Well,
Yeah.
if you go to your family doctor and have them as your designated physician, they can refer you to anyone they want to refer you to. And if they refer you to an orthopedic, you go to that orthopedic and you and that orthopedic just don't get along well and you don't really want to treat with them, you can go back to your family doctor and say, refer me to somebody else. And there's no problem in doing that from there. One trick the insurance companies like to do is when they refer you to an orthopedic is to get you to switch to that orthopedic as your next designated doctor. You don't have to do that, but they try to do that, and that way you can't switch again. They've got you held to where they want you at unless they control where you go to after that. So.
And friends, I'm gonna put a link in the show notes to episode 68. And that's specifically where Jeff spent a lot of time talking about that designated physicians form. And again, it's just unfortunately one of the games that can be played there. The other thing, Jeff, that you've talked about in the past is where the company might have an internal policy that says, hey, if you're injured, you have to report it within 24, 48 hours, or where you're not going to be able to, file the claim. And that's just flat out wrong.
That's not Kentucky law whatsoever. You don't have a set deadline on reporting it. Now, Kentucky says as soon as practical after the work-related injury, but that there are reasons for that to be extended. One classic case that is kind of the bellwether decision on that point was a gentleman had I can't remember if it's neck or low back, but anyway, he got hurt at work lifting something, thought it was just a strained muscle and that it would go away. And so he kept on doing it. It didn't go away. And I can't remember if it was 7, 8 weeks later or even longer than that, that he found out it was more than a strained muscle, that he'd actually herniated a disc. And then he went back and told the employer, and the court said he had a legitimate reason. He didn't think it was anything serious. And when he found out it was serious, he reported it. He gave due and timely notice in that regard. So that's there's some potential for wiggle there, but the best thing to do is give the employer, if you're at work and you have sudden onset of pain, let the employer know it then. With cumulative trauma, a lot of times you don't realize it's work-related until you see the doctor, and the doctor says, oh, yeah, I've seen a lot of people that work at Martin Rhea who's had this kind of injury, and then you realize that, okay, maybe my work have caused this injury, and then you can give notice in, because if you don't know it's work-related until a doctor tells you, then you're fine. That's an excusable neglect. Actually, cumulative trauma has a different notice requirement than a normal single trauma injury claim does. For that very reason, you have a lot longer to give notice on cumulative trauma. You have 2 years.
It's amazing that we're actually talking about this specific topic. I was sitting over at my parents' house over the weekend, and my nephew, several years younger than me, obviously, works on an assembly line. And, was complaining about his hands hurting because he's constantly doing repetitive motions. And I'm looking at him going, man, that's exactly what Jeff was talking about. You're doing the same things. Your grip strength is wearing out. You've just got that aching, in your wrist or in your fingers and your palms. And that can be a sign also of just things are just being used a lot more than normally. Somebody else might use their hands or do that motion. But when you do it every day over and over and over, 5, 6 days a week, it's going to wear you down.
Oh, it does. It will wear you down. And, working on in a manufacturing facility, especially if you do a job where you're having to walk a whole lot on concrete, you wear other body. I mean, we talked about the back and shoulders. You can definitely wear your knees out walking on concrete all day long and develop more problems with the knees as a result of that. You can have any activity you do over, a lot over a daytime can cause problems from that standpoint. And so cumulative trauma is real, and a lot of people think, well, there's no such thing as cumulative trauma. Any doctor worth their salt is going to. The only doctors who say there's no such thing as cumulative trauma have kind of been bought out by the insurance company, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So,
in previous episodes, we talked about, in episode 119, we talked about automotive parts and metal forming plants. And you actually have a background. You here in Callaway County, when you were in college at Murray State, you worked at Briggs and Stratton. So you've done a punch press, and then you moved over to the die casting. So again, some of these types of activities are probably located in Hopkinsville. So obviously, it's nice to be, call an attorney who's actually done the process, who actually kind of has a better feel for it.
Yes, I did work at Briggs and Stratton when I was at Murray State University and doing my undergrad work, and then actually stayed on for a year afterwards full time. Went full time my senior year and stayed a year after to put back some money for law school so I could go to the law school in that regard. So I'm familiar with manufacturing facilities and at times when law school was getting a little difficult there, I would think back to the die-cast department at Briggs and Stratton and think, I don't really want to go back to handling parts that 30 seconds before I had my hands on them were molten aluminum. I think I'll go ahead and pick that book up and start studying again on this. So, but I am familiar with that process. I've done that process, and it is, and actually I did enjoy working at Briggs and Stratton, worked for some really, really good people, and with some really good people there at that facility from there. But, the factory workers essentially built this country, in my opinion. I mean, we are the country we are in large part because of the workers who worked in these factories to build all the stuff that we use on a daily basis now. So,
well, and that's the thing about this. I mean, and maybe that was part of the reason that you developed that focus in workers' comp is because again you kind of done the job, and over the past 33 years, I don't know how many cases we've never really tallied up how many cases you've handled, how many claims you've handled, but I think you've probably seen a whole bunch of different types of injuries, unfortunately, and a whole bunch of different types of facilities. So I mean, you're familiar with all these different functions, I would think.
Oh yeah, I've I couldn't even guess how many cases that I've handled. I mean, I know it's in the thousands, well over 1,000 and multiple thousands of cases I've handled over the years now after doing this for 33 years. I would be very surprised if there's an injury that comes in the door that I haven't dealt with at some point in my career. In that regard, I've seen some very bad injuries in that regard, but but as you say, part of the reason I do what I do is I have that background, and that's my family background. My dad was a union electrician. I've got brothers that worked at General Tire as a tire manufacturer, and another one has worked at some chicken processing facilities and some other different places in that regard. So my family, and that's just my immediate family. You go outside of that, and I've got aunts, uncles, and everything else that's worked in all kinds of factories throughout that, and helping them. I've represented several family members in these type of cases in the past, and that's my people. So that's
that's what. And what's really interesting, we don't talk about this all that often because again, that's just more or less your nature. You're not the kind of guy that likes to pat himself on the back, but you've actually taken some workers' comp cases all the way to the Kentucky Supreme Court, where you've developed quite the track record up there.
Well, I like to think I've developed a good track record up there. I've been meaning to go back and look and see how many cases I've had at the Supreme Court. I know I've been involved in cases that have changed the law beneficially for the citizens of Kentucky, both on the workers' comp side and the personal injury side in that regard. And, I've been to the Court of Appeals and Supreme Court a whole lot in my career, and in fact, I've been asked a couple of different times to write what's called amicus briefs or friend of the court briefs on issues where I wasn't an attorney in the case. It was an issue of great importance, and someone who knows I'm going to be on the plaintiff side and I'm not going to be on the insurance or side at all on that, but asked me to write a brief in support of a certain position that I obviously agreed with, or I wouldn't have wrote the brief. And I've been involved in that a few times and been successful in getting some positive changes made to the law here in Kentucky. So,
Well, I tell you what. In fact, you're working on another case right now. We talked about it a couple of episodes ago that is, I guess, actively at the Supreme Court. And you're
Correct.
waiting for the decision to come down. So hopefully we'll have a upcoming decision on that, where specifically you will be making new law in Kentucky if the court sides with you. So
Yeah.
hopefully we'll have that conversation
Yes.
here in a couple of months or so.
And I don't normally bring this up, but since you brought it up, yeah, I do think, as you know, I don't know if we've ever mentioned it in a podcast, but I think part of my being up at the Supreme Court in the appellate practice also led to what is one of the highlights, in my opinion, of my career there is I was actually asked and served as a special justice to the Kentucky Supreme Court on a case before. So that's, and I think my appellate work is the reason why I got asked to be a special justice in that case. So
Yeah, which is rare, I would think.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine, every attorney goes, yeah, okay, it's my turn.
Yeah.
No, that's not how that works, I wouldn't think.
no, it's not.
Okay. Well, congratulations for
Yeah.
that, too. Hey, Jeff, as we start to close out this episode, you've got that, as we mentioned at the outset, the Hopkinsville office, and you're over on South Virginia Street, right?
Correct. Yeah, 1910 South Virginia Street is the address, Suite 210 there in a building called Virginia Place. And if you're going to, if you want to see me there at the Hopkinsville office, call me. We can try to set up an appointment for you there. And the phone number for reaching out to me is the same whether you're calling me, trying to reach me at my Hopkinsville office or my Murray office. I've got one number. It's 270-753-0053. And if you call, if you're called during business hours, you should get a live person to answer the phone instead of the computer answering the phone, and they will get some information, and then we'll try to set up an appointment with you. And, that's, I mentioned earlier about opening up and why I opened up the office there in Hopkinsville for the clients up in that area. It kind of goes back to the motto that we have here at my office that I've mentioned previously in these. And the motto for my office, for me and for all of my staff, is that we try to provide small town service and deliver big city results. And having that office a little closer to the folks up in the Christian County area helps me to provide that small town service to them.
Well, and I like what you just said, helps you to provide that service. You're the only attorney in the office. I mean, so when you are taking a case, when you sign up a client, that client is going to know that Jeff Roberts is working directly for him or her. And I think that might be a little bit of a change from some of these other large firms that you see advertising at times.
Yeah, I don't know how other firms handle things, but I've always been of the opinion that if you hire me to handle your case, then I should be I should be the attorney handling your case. And, I don't want to hire an associate and then have somebody hire me based on my reputation and then have an associate just handle the case from that standpoint. Now, I understand companies have or firms have associates that work under a supervising lawyer, and they're certainly fine in that regard. I worked under a supervising lawyer when I first started practicing in that regard, but the one that's in court with the client should be the attorney they hire, in my opinion. So
yeah, it's a good way to be. Again, you're locked in, whether you're handling the workers' comp case, the automobile case, the Social Security disability, or a combination, because all three of those can actually be filed at the same time if that's the facts of the case, right? I mean, you don't have to wait to file one or the other. Not often that it happens, but again, it has, and you've been involved in some of those cases. So that's always kind of interesting. Yeah. Well, Jeff, I want to thank you for your time. Thanks very much, and I encourage people, if you're in that Christian County area, and again, it doesn't have to be just Christian County. If you're over in Madisonville, you're over in some of these other towns, and you need a workers' comp attorney, and you just want to maybe ask a few questions. Jeff does give free consultation, so it's another reason to call that phone number. We'll have that in the show notes, obviously. And I encourage you to pick up the phone and ask Jeff. Hey, here's what's going on. Does this sound right? And do you think I have a claim? And go from there. But first step is really just to pick up the phone and call.
that's right.
Outstanding, Jeff. Thanks again for your time, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Take care, guy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Roberts Law Office Injury Podcast. Jeff will return in 2 weeks. Until then, he invites you to visit jeffrobertslaw.com and follow his firm on Facebook. At the Roberts Law Office, you'll find a history of small town service and big city results.